Paris, 1307. No one would dream of attacking them in their Templar stronghold in Paris. However, this night would see many die and many more be imprisoned for years, before being publicly burnt at the stake. Friday the 13th, 1307 was to be the most dangerous and deadly night to be a knight. It would go down in history as a turning point for the powerful and wealthy religious order. The Templars had existed for nearly 2 centuries, and would now be brought to its knees. Little did they know that this had been a carefully executed political scheme that they had no chance against. King Philip IV of France, their royal leader, had ordered the simultaneous arrest of hundreds of Templar knights throughout his kingdom, setting in motion a series of events that would lead to the downfall of the order. This night of violence did not happen by chance. Royals, papal clergy and other members of the 1% all knew what was coming. Why did God's men need to be brought down? We will examine the events leading up to the arrests, the reasons behind them, and what happened to the knights who were caught up in the dragnet. To understand the events of October 13, it is necessary to provide some background on the Templars. Here we go, a super quick intro. The Knights Templar was a military order founded in 1119 by a group of French knights. The order was established to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land and to defend the territories that had been captured during the Crusades. The Templars, however, quickly became a powerful and wealthy organization, with holdings throughout Europe and the Middle East. The most important part is that they played a significant role in the development of international banking, providing loans to monarchs and nobles throughout Europe. Yes, you heard that correctly, they lent money to royals. We need to take a moment and realize just how big and powerful their banking system actually was, as this was the fundamental reason why they were brought down. What did they do and how? The Knights Templar were unquestionably at the forefront of banking during their era. In the process, they had accumulated a vast amount of wealth before their downfall. They had established a prosperous network of financial operations across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, that allowed them to provide financial services to both ordinary people and royalty alike. They set up a banking system that simply allowed religious pilgrims to deposit money in their home countries and withdraw it in the Holy Land, which eliminated the need to carry large sums of cash across dangerous territory. This made traveling so much safer. So how did the knights make their money? What were the fees? I am sure you are thinking about it. No bank in history has not had bank fees. This banking system was no different, as the Knights Templar charged a fee for their services, effectively levying interest on loans, even though the charging of interest was prohibited by universal laws at the time. The Templars were keen to uphold a reputation for transparency and honesty, and they devised a system where the interest covered the lender's risk and was calculated beforehand, which included the amount borrowed. The Knights also had a network of Templar communities across Europe that helped alleviate financial burdens. New recruits, upon entering the order, handed over all their worldly possessions, as they took a vow of poverty. This included land, livestock, property, and even tenants. These possessions were then used to generate revenue, which was used to finance the order's operations. Now to the juicy part. Not only everyday people used the system, royalty did as well. Of course, being royalty, they would require larger amounts and in turn owed a significant amount of money to the Templars. For example, King John of England borrowed money from the Templars in 1213 to obtain absolution after being excommunicated by the Pope. He also borrowed additional funds to pay his soldiers in Poitou and Gascony, as well as before signing the Magna Carta. Other monarchs also relied on the Templars' banking services. King Henry III paid £200 a year for 5 years to the Temple in London for the use of their treasury. In addition, when he purchased the island of Oleron, the Templars brokered the deal and collected installment payments from the king. The Templars also acted as pawnbrokers for Henry III when he was fighting his own barons and was in need of funds. Therefore, while it's not clear if Henry III owed money to the Templars in the traditional sense of borrowing, he did make use of their services and paid them for their assistance. However, by the early 14th century, the Templars had fallen out of favor with many European monarchs, including Philip IV of France. There were several reasons for this: the fact that the order had become too powerful and wealthy, and many thought that it had outlived its original purpose. Side note, Philip was also deeply in debt to the Templars, and he saw an opportunity to wipe out his financial obligations by confiscating the order's assets. Philip's plan to destroy the Templars began to take shape in 1305 when he was able to influence the papal conclave to elect a Frenchman, Bertrand de Got, as Pope Clement V. Philip hoped that Clement would be sympathetic to his cause and would help him to bring down the Templars. Clement was initially reluctant to take action against the order, but he eventually agreed to do so under pressure from Philip. We know King Philip owed a massive amount of money to the Templars, but what he also knew was that the order had a large fortress in Paris, which reputedly was sitting on a large stockpile of deposited bullion. Okay, 10 points to you if you have made it this far. So what exactly did Philip now do? He could not just take their assets for no reason, so he had charges laid against them. What should you charge a holy order with? Unholy crimes. So begins the most horrific final years as a Templar Knight. Before dawn on the morning of Friday 13th, Philip's men raided the Paris quarters where the knights were. Many fought hard and were killed, some others resisted but were arrested. It has been suggested that many other knights were captured in other cities in a coordinated attack. Philip had been prepared. Some believe that secret documents were sent a month earlier by couriers throughout France, and the papers included lurid accusations of blasphemy, urinating on the cross, heresy, and sodomy against the Templars. Believe that if you will, but it sounds very calculated. So what did King Philip do now? He had the leader of the Templar Knights in his prison. What was required now were the right confessions from the knights so that he could prove to the Vatican that what he had done was in accordance with law. So began the extraction of confessions. Now the Templar Knights were mostly men who had given up their lands and family for a godly cause. They are not about to be that corrupt. However, with the knights most likely being innocent, it would be hard to get the right confessions, so Philip upped the ante and used various techniques, such as torture. King Philip was known to use several methods, including starvation, sleep deprivation, relentless questioning, and the use of the strappado, which was a device that yanked the victim's arms upward behind their back while they were suspended from a rope. Other methods of torture used by Philip's agents included the rack, the iron chair, and finally burning at the stake. Many knights were tortured just enough to get the right confession out of them. But get this, it depended on where you were captured, determined just how badly tortured you were. Some knights in other cities confessed to smaller crimes and were let go. However, this would not be the case if you had been arrested in Paris with the last Grandmaster of the Templar Knights. You were tortured and then imprisoned for years. Jacques de Molay, the last Grandmaster of the Knights Templar, was imprisoned for 7 years. He eventually died on March 19, 1314 in Paris. At the age of 71 he was charged with heresy and various other crimes according to King Philip IV. Jacques was burned at the stake near the site of the Isle de la Cite, which is located in the middle of the Seine River in Paris. The site of his execution is marked with a plaque that indicates the location of the event, and it is located by the stairs from the Pont Neuf bridge on the island. He was not the only Knight Templar who burned. Some sources estimate that around 60 Templars were burned at the stake in Paris between 1310 and 1314, while others suggest that the number was closer to 200. So what happened to all that bullion located in the Templars' banks? It is not clear what Philip did with all the money he obtained from the Templars. Some historians suggest that he used it to finance his military campaigns and other activities, while others argue that he hoarded it for his own personal use. There is no consensus among historians about whether any Knights Templar survived the order's dissolution. While some people believe the order went underground and remains in existence to this day, most historians agree that the Knights Templar fully disbanded 700 years ago. Some legends suggest that the descendants of the Templar settlers in Scotland eventually sailed to the New World, taking their treasure to Oak Island, Nova Scotia, where it was buried in the notorious Money Pit. However, as like most of history, there is no concrete evidence to support these claims, but there are plenty of people searching for it.